Hi, I'm Kaylee. I'm a pediatric physical therapist and a mama of two, and I wanted to share with you today our journey of dropping the pacifier recently with our son, who is 2.5, and a little bit of information about how we dropped it with our daughter, who is now 4, but we dropped it when she was about 2.5 as well. I do want to preface all of this information with the fact that while I am a physical therapist, I work with babies and children on a daily basis. This is more from the lens of me as a mama. So sure, I've gleaned wisdom from behavioral experts, both in person and in the online space, and I've got some tricks up my sleeve as well, just from working with kiddos. But my story is really going to be just our family's story. It's not a point of my own expertise, but I've gotten lots and lots of questions from worried mamas just wondering how to even begin. And so one thing I just want to say too is that I said I was not going to be a pacifier mom. I wanted a really strong breastfeeding relationship, and thank goodness I did have that with both of my babies, but both of them also were very suck soothing dependent, meaning that they would suck and suck and suck all day long to calm down if they could. And I had a choice at that time. I had a choice whether I wanted to be a mom who nursed constantly on demand, and that is a great option for many moms. For me, I needed to stick to a little bit more of a consistent routine and schedule, and that was just a personal choice that I made. I never withheld milk from my babies when they truly were hungry, but if they just wanted that comfort nursing, it was really hard for me, and it was something that I did just to protect my peace as a mom postpartum. I would get kind of that skin crawling feeling if my babies were nursing more frequently and I could tell that they didn't need the milk, and so that's a story for another time. But I will say, oftentimes we can go into parenthood thinking like, I'm not going to do this or I'm going to do that for sure. And then we have our own babies and we have to make the best decision that we can. So recently we went to the dentist and both of my little ones actually have a narrow palate. Our 4.5-year-old is going to have a palate expander, and most likely our 2.5-year-old is as well. And that is probably not the story for all kiddos. We will probably seek a second opinion before deciding on that. But just to give a little bit of context, like I started feeling really guilty, thinking, gosh, if I just hadn't have given them the pacifier, and then I had to push that guilt out of my mind because whatever cost it is for this palate expander, it was so worth it to me to know I had a way that I could soothe my babies. I learned along my motherhood journey that I'm very auditorily sensitive. So when my babies are crying, it can be really overwhelming and triggering for me. And the pacifier was a way that I felt like I could use that tool to help calm them enough that I could then take care of calming them the rest of the way, whether it be assessing their needs and deciding they did need to eat or putting them down for a nap. And so if you're struggling with guilt about this as well, put that out of your mind. You did the best thing that you could at the time to soothe your baby and to do what works for you. And sorry if you're hearing my dog. I think they're either frustrated at an animal or sleeping. Usually when they bark like that, it's actually that they're sleeping and they're barking at squirrels in their sleep. But they're fine. So we dropped the pacifier with our 2.5-year-old recently because he used to have, just at night, a lovey attached to it. One of those little wubba-nub things attached to where it wouldn't fall out of the crib. And it actually broke and fell off probably 3 or 4 months ago. And so at that point we decided, okay, that's one step closer toward eliminating the pacifier. And I guess I should dial it back even further than that. About 6 months ago, near his 2nd birthday, we decided it was time. He'd gotten through his big 2-year molars, and we knew that there was going to be limited opportunities in the day that he was going to really need that pacifier for soothing. we could soothe him in ways that he wasn't going to need that, versus when they get those molars in, it was actually very helpful for him to be able to kind of chew and suck on that to relieve some of the pressure and tension in his mouth. So around 2 years of age, we decided, okay, only naps, nighttime, and long car trips were when he could have his pacifier. So we cut it down from him just asking for it throughout the day to naps, nighttime, and long car trips. And we would just continually remind him, he called his pacifier Gaga. Gaga's for night-night, Gaga's for nap time. We're all done, Gaga. Mama and Daddy are here to help you. And we just really talk him through those big emotions that he might be having about not having it accessible. For many kids, speech language pathologists will recommend as little pacifier time throughout the day as possible, especially from 12 months on, because that's when they're really starting to explore speech and language independently themselves. So that expressive language. So we did not want it to limit his talking. If he did ever have it throughout the day and he would try to talk through it, or even during bedtime routine, he would try to talk through it, we'd say, uh-oh, I can't hear you. You need to take Gaga out. And that would help him to kind of understand, like, I need this out of my mouth if I want to communicate my needs. So around 2 years, we dropped it down just for sleep and for long car rides. And then a little bit later than that, that's when he dropped his little lovey that was attached to it. And we started noticing over the past month or two, his pacifier is constantly falling out of his crib. And we gave him probably 3 or 4 pacifiers in his crib to just try to combat that. His pacifiers glowed in the dark. And then we started realizing that it was becoming purposeful. So he was getting old enough to know, if I throw my pacifier out of my crib and cry, Mom and Dad will come to get me. And, you know, that just really to us was an indicator that it was time. We were losing sleep, and getting rid of the pacifier is kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. Like, it's better to just, in my opinion, at least go cold turkey once you're at that point where it's just naps and bedtime. You're going to lose sleep over it, and they're going to lose sleep over it. So it's better to just get it over with. So that, combined with the fact that we went to the dentist and we found out about the palate expanders that they were going to need, I got really gung-ho and was like, okay, this week we are doing it. We're dropping the pacifier. And hindsight perspective, what I would tell you is I would give that process about a 2-week time frame. So the reason I say I would give it about a 2-week time frame is because we really need our little ones to kind of be on board and be prepared. We want to do this with all things in life. So maybe you're going on an airplane ride for the first time, or they're going to the dentist. We want to be doing what's called social storying. And this is something that I've learned through my clinical practice that has reaped so many benefits with raising my babies. So social storying is basically creating a story about something that's going to happen and thinking of all possible questions or anxieties that they might have and addressing those in a story. And so in the therapy world, we actually do make little booklets with pictures that have stories. But in my mom world, sometimes I like to just utilize books that are already available. I'll link some of those below that we used. We actually didn't have time to purchase those books because I was like, we're doing this. Again, hindsight perspective, I would have Amazon Primed those books. We would have had them in our hands to where that way every day for the next 2 weeks we could be reading those books. So those kind of bye-bye pacifier books. But I would just talk him through it. Okay, tomorrow, buddy, we're going to say bye-bye to pacifier. We're going to be all done with the pacifier, and I'll go into kind of what we replaced it with next. But we talked a lot about, you know, you're going to have your blankie, and Mommy and Daddy will rock you to sleep, and you'll go good night, and you'll rest well, and you'll be okay without Gaga. You're still safe, and we can still help you be comfortable. So we ended up YouTubing some of the books that people had recommended on Bye Bye Pacifier, and we also watched an episode of Sesame Street about Bye Bye Passy, and that is actually really helpful because they go through lots of different ways that different families choose to drop a pacifier, like the pacifier fairy, or exchanging your pacifier for a new toy, or throwing them all away, giving them to a new baby, all these different scenarios. And it talks at the end about how, you know, really they have to be ready. Now, while I agree with that to an extent, we are still the parent, and sometimes we know what's best, and we have to make that decision for our child and know that with our love and support and comfort, they will be okay. So we crammed that social storying into just 2 days. In hindsight, you guys, really, I mean it when I say I wish I would have given it at least a week, if not 2 weeks, to start reading those books and really talking about it. I think it would have gone a lot more smoothly had we given it that time. I think my mom anxiety got to me a little bit when we went to the dentist and I found out about his palate, and I was just thinking, we just need to be done with this. And we also weren't sleeping because he was throwing his pacifier out. So we were all just ready to try to turn a new leaf. So with our first daughter, what we did when we had gotten to this point was we actually cut a hole in the tip of all of her pacifiers. It allowed her to still explore her pacifier and hold it without the suction that's so soothing. I liked that for her a lot because I felt like for her it allowed that gradual process of getting rid of it. She didn't get that desired effect anymore, and so it was no longer useful to her. But so many people on my page, The Movement Mama, had recommended the Pacifier Fairy. It was recommended by a big name behavior account. And so I thought, you know what, let's just try this. Let's just go cold turkey and try this. And so the idea of the Pacifier Fairy is that you make a really, really big deal of them putting their pacifiers in a box, and then you can place that box in a special spot. The Pacifier Fairy comes and gets the pacifiers and then leaves a gift in its place. And often the gift is something that's going to be soothing or comforting to them that they can snuggle with instead of their pacifier. So we decided to go this route. We also do the Switch Witch around Halloween. That's a similar concept when our kids, who are way too young to be consuming all of this candy that they get, they put and pick and choose about half of their candy and they set it out for the Switch Witch, and then they get a toy in its place. So just another aside there. So we decided to do this with him, to just go the cold turkey route. We had a little shoebox and I let him decorate it, and we talked about how he was going to give it to the Pacifier Fairy and we were going to leave it out on our porch, and he seemed really excited. And my husband had picked up this adorable little fuzzy bear that we were going to set out and he was going to get the next morning. And so that's part of it too, is that there's that anticipation of, if I sleep well tonight, I'll wake up to something in the morning. So it's not that immediate reward. It's an exciting kind of thing. Some people even go so far as to like having a cake next day to celebrate being such a big boy or girl. We did not have the time to plan for all of that. So we did the Pacifier Fairy. He set it out and he had a really, really hard time going to sleep. My husband ended up laying in there and holding his hand. We just kept talking to him and reaffirming him in short phrases of, you are safe, you're okay, Pacifier's going bye-bye to the fairy, you're gonna wake up to something so exciting that she'll bring you. You're safe, we're here to support you. And just repeating those phrases over and over and over again. We also extended bedtime routine that night, so we did even more books than we normally do, even more songs than we normally do, lots of rocking and just really comforting him to try to get him into a really deep, groggy state. Now with our daughter, once she got rid of it, our kids' temperaments are just so different. She was okay with us just like kind of patting her bottom, and she fell asleep pretty easily. Our son, his temperament is just a little bit more physical touch oriented, a little bit higher alertness state, so he takes more to kind of calm down and relax for bed. And so for the next probably 3 nights and 3 days, like we didn't get naps. Bedtime was a real struggle. He woke up multiple times through the night asking for Gaga, which is his pacifier, and we would just have to go in and calm him and soothe him, and trying to not get him out of bed, but to just soothe him where he was so that he didn't wake up. And I'm happy to report that yesterday was the first night, so that would have been about 5 days in, was the first night that he went down. No issues. He was very tired, but he fell asleep, and he actually stayed asleep all night. He didn't wake up crying for his pacifier, and he didn't wake up early. And then today for nap time was hard. They're not in as deep of a sleepy state. That melatonin is not super high like it is at bedtime, and so their body's inclination to sleep often needs help. The pacifier used to soothe him and get him into that groggy state, and not having it makes it more difficult. And I just continued to say the same things. pacifiers are gone. The fairy came and got them. You have your fuzzy bear you can hold on to, and I'll rub your back and hold your hand. And so on this same vein, I just want to talk about something that I've been thinking about a lot recently based on a book I read called To Hell with the Hustle, I think is the name of it. But they were saying, like, do you have enough time built into your day, your week, or your month to be inconvenienced by your children? And I'm so thankful that I'm in a space now with work and with life and everything where I do have that reserve built in. I don't panic if I have to spend the whole nap time trying to get him down. Now, I would if that was all day, every week, but knowing that this was going to be a short-lived thing helped me to get through it. And just, I pushed aside my responsibilities. Our house was kind of a disaster, like the dishes were piling up, but I knew that the time I was spending nurturing him and leaning into this really tough transition for him would pay off dividends in the long run, not only for him, but for our relationship. He learned that he could trust me to comfort him and be there for him when things were really, really hard. So that's just another aside, but something really big. Like when your kids go through these major transitions, we have to be willing to put aside our typical responsibilities to an extent, the ones that we can push off, and really step in and be there for them and know that that work we're putting in is going to pay off. So our journey is continuing. I have to say again, just the more time you can give it for them to be okay with the idea of getting rid of the pacifier, the better. I'm not an expert on when you should get rid of it. For both of our kids, we really wanted to get through those 2-year molars because they can be really uncomfortable. But there are plenty of kids who get through that phase and are totally, totally fine without a pacifier. If you're thinking about it now, I would say, if you feel like your baby can start or your toddler can start sleeping independently, or they're sleeping pretty well and showing you that they're a good sleeper and you're not concerned about that, now would be a great time to ditch it, to try to avoid those oral dysfunctions or things that can come with the pacifier. But I hope this was helpful. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I will drop the link to a couple of helpful books below, as well as that Sesame Street episode if I can. That was really helpful for us, and we could sing the bye bye Binky, Binky bye bye. We would sing that and try to make it very happy and lighthearted, but this is a really hard thing that so many parents have to go through, and so I hope that this has helped you in some small way. Let me know any questions you have in the comments below, and I'll see what I can do to help.